Who Owns America? This is my op-ed over at HartmannReport.com, my daily take. It's titled, Who Owns America? Musk and Trump are fighting over the deed. And my take on this is a little different than everybody else's. People are like, oh boy, look at this, and it's a dick measuring contest, or AOC said the girls are fighting. Somebody else called it a cat fight on CNN, and one of the commentators said, well, that's sexist. But, if AOC is going there, I don't know. We're watching the world's richest man, registered trademark, and the world's most powerful man, registered trademark, battle for supremacy on social media like feuding warlords, How did the land of Lincoln and Roosevelt, of Eisenhower and Kennedy, become a playground for billionaire sociopaths? This is a really meaningful and important question, and it blows my mind, frankly, that I think I'm the only person in the media who's asking this question. How did this happen? How did we end up with two billionaires, the richest man in the world and one of the richest men in the world, fighting with each other in public? And the answer comes down to basically one guy, John Roberts. And again, nobody's talking about this. Were it not for Citizens United, Donald Trump never would have become president. Elon Musk, who is claiming that the only reason Trump is president is because he threw hundreds of millions of dollars into the campaign and basically ran the Trump campaign ground operation in 5 or 6 swing states. And I think he's right, by the way. Elon Musk saying basically, I bought this election. I own this government. What are you doing getting in my way here, Donald? How dare you kick me out of the White House? In 2010, Chief Justice John Roberts made a choice, and it was a choice that echoes a comment that Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis made back in 1919. He said, we may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. And like I said, in 2020, John Roberts chose the billionaires. He chose oligarchy. He chose to detonate 240 years of American democracy. I mean, this case was supposed to be really simple, right? The Citizens United case. This group, this right-wing group funded by fossil fuel billionaires, Citizens United, they wanted to show a documentary in theaters called Hillary the Movie. Now, the assumption was that, and this was 2008, by the way, the assumption was that Hillary was going to end up being the nominee. She got blown out of the water by a charismatic young black man, Barack Obama, which was a pretty remarkable thing in and of itself. But everybody assumed Hillary was going to be the nominee in 2008, and so they rolled out this movie, and they wanted to roll out this movie 30 days before the primary. And the McCain-Feingold Act, which was, election, cleaning up our elections, the McCain-Feingold Act explicitly forbids that. It says, corporate, see, this is a corporation. It was a nonprofit, but it was a corporation. Corporate electioneering is illegal within 30 days of a general election and 60 days of a primary. Maybe it's the other way around. And so this case ended up before the Supreme Court. Should they be allowed to play this movie? And they heard the arguments, and they got together to decide it, and there was a 5-4 consensus to say, yeah, they can show the movie. But then Roberts, at the urging of Anthony Kennedy, did something pretty radical, something that is very rarely done. He went back to the parties, the Federal Election Commission and this nonprofit, Citizens United, and said, I want you to re-argue the case. We're going to start this all over again. Only this time, instead of arguing about whether or not you should be allowed to watch a movie or play a movie within 30 days of an election, I want you to argue about whether or not a corporation should be able to pour unlimited amounts of money into political campaigns as long as there is some disclosure. Now, Roberts' assumption and Kennedy's assumption, in fact, Kennedy wrote about this at some length in the first iteration of the decision in Citizens United, was that if there's transparency, if people know where the money came from, then people can discount the consequences of that money. In other words, if you see a whole bunch of ads trash-talking, a particular candidate, and at the very end it says this ad was paid for by AIPAC, because this candidate doesn't like Benjamin Netanyahu, then you could say, oh, yeah, okay, well, these people have an axe to grind. I'm going to ignore the fact that they're saying that the candidate is actually a secret Nazi or, eats babies or something like that. Now, time has proven that this was just wrong, that the source of the money, revealing the source of the money does not generally diminish the impact of the money. But here we are. Here we are. And this was judicial activism on steroids. I laid this whole thing out in The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. This was a 5-4 decision, all Republican appointees. And Justice John Paul Stevens, a Democratic appointee, was so furious that he read his 90-page dissent aloud from the bench, forcing Roberts and the other 4 bought-off Republicans on the Supreme Court to sit there awkwardly and listen to him rant. He said, this ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. The path it has taken to reach its outcome will, I fear, do damage to this institution. Stevens went on to say, a democracy cannot function effectively when its constituent members believe laws are being bought and sold. Roberts and Kennedy had changed the case to give themselves an opportunity to change the law, he said. And the result of this bizarre decision that no other democracy, advanced democracy in the world tolerates, has been an explosion in billionaire and corporate money flooding our election system. It's made a mockery of Roberts and Kennedy's assertion that transparency will win the day. And now you get Elon Musk saying, and I quote, without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude. In other words, I'm the rich guy who bought the White House for you, Trump. You owe me. And, sure enough, John Paul Stevens was right. Outside spending exploded from $574 million in 2008 to $4.5 billion last year. Dark money surged from $5 million in 2006 to more than $1 billion last year. In 2024, 100 billionaire families poured $2.6 billion into electing mostly Republicans. I mean, Musk himself dumped $290 million, $238 through his America PAC, $20 million through his RGB PAC that dishonored Ruth Bader Ginsburg's memory, $1 million a day in the so-called lottery payments to swing state voters. This is a hostile takeover of the American government. It's so corrupt. I mean, it would embarrass a banana republic. So what do we do about this? Well, we have to vote out every single Republican. They have all embraced Citizens United. You want the proof of it? The fossil fuel billionaires who have, created much of the infrastructure that the Republican Party uses, who funded so much of it, the Cato Institute, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the Heritage Foundation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They put the word out. Republicans, you may not endorse anything that has to do with climate change. You're supposed to pretend that our product is not poisoning the atmosphere. And every single Republican has fallen into line. So vote out all the Republicans. And then last week, or earlier, maybe it was earlier this week, there was this group of so-called moderate Democrats. The kind of face of them, I guess, is Josh Gottheimer and Jared Golden. But, these are Democratic members of Congress who are proudly on the take. Yes, we do the business of corporate. In fact, they call themselves corporate problem solvers. So let's vote out the people who have been exploiting Citizens United, and let's return democracy to America.